everyone, welcome back to the Growing Grace podcast. And on today's episode, I am going to be talking all about loving like Jesus and loving our enemies. And I wanted to do this episode because it can be really hard, especially in today's world, to love those that persecute you, to love those that disagree with you. But it is something that is so important, and it is one of the commands that we are given. And there is a very popular acronym, and it's WWJD, what would Jesus do? And there's a response to that that's another acronym, and it's HWLF, he would love first. And so I just really want to dive into what it looks like to love like Jesus. That obviously we know what love means, and we know that Jesus died on the cross for us, but what does that look like in our lives, and what love are we supposed to show to others? So, starting off in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 1 through 7, we are told what love is and what it should look like. So, it says, "If I could speak all the languages of earth and of angels, but didn't love others, I would only be a noisy gong or clanging cymbal. If I had the gift of prophecy, and if I understood all of God's secret plans and possessed all knowledge, and if I had such faith that I could move mountains but didn't love others, I would be nothing. If I gave everything I have to the poor and even sacrificed my body, I could boast about it, but if I didn't love others, I would have gained nothing. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith. It is always hopeful and endures through every circumstance." And my Bible has a little part in it that talks about 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And it says, "Love is a hard thing. Often the focus is on the beautiful, warm aspects of loving one another. While that's all good and true, love has another facet that makes it much more complex. Love means that we set ourselves up intentionally to experience the pain that comes when those we choose to love hurt, or when they hurt us. This passage is frequently used in weddings as young love is publicly proclaimed, but it's also a passage that shouts to all followers of Jesus, no matter what stage of life we're in. Good works and good intentions are nice, Paul says, but that definition of love always falls short. Our deepest obedience is to love when it is beautiful and good, and to love when it means walking through dark, messy places with one another. This is love, the way Jesus defines it, a love that transforms by its persistent presence. Love can hurt in our lifetime, but from the perspective of eternity, love always wins out. Love is pain's next-door neighbor, but even in our pain, those who follow Jesus can already taste the sweetness of eternal victory. As the proverb reminds us, it's Friday, but Sunday is coming." And that chapter, those couple verses really just lay out what love is. That little excerpt also reminds us that loving isn't always easy, but it's what we're called to do. And Jesus is the ultimate example of this love. If we go to Luke chapter 23, verse 34, I want to give a little bit of background first, but this is when Jesus is on the cross and he is actively being crucified. And instead of cursing out the people that did this to him, instead of being angry with them or upset, he says, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they are doing." And that is just so powerful, because even in the darkest time, even when he is in an immense amount of pain, physically and mentally, Jesus still says, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And that is the ultimate act of love, that he not only died on the cross for us, but for those people as well. And when he was dying on that cross, he didn't get upset or angry with them, but he said, "Father, please forgive them." And we can see another example of Jesus' love in John chapter 13, verses 34 through 35, which say, "So now I am giving you a new commandment. Love each other, just as I have loved you. You should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples." So when we claim to be followers of Christ, when we claim to be Christians, we need to make sure that we are in alignment with this, because this is a commandment from Jesus saying that we need to love one another, because that is going to be a key indicator to other people that we follow Christ. Now, in this verse, Jesus uses himself as the example, that he says, love one another just as I have loved you. And if we read the Bible, we can see how much Jesus loves others. We can see how much he has loved his people, and he still loves us today. And so that is our standard. That yes, we're going to slip up. Yes, we're going to fall. No, we're not going to be able to perfectly match how Jesus loves others, but we should be striving to love one another as Jesus did each and every day. And we can see another example in Romans chapter 13, verse 10, where it says, love does no wrong to others, so love fulfills the requirements of God's law. And all of these verses also mean, and all of these verses don't just mean love the people that love you back. They don't mean love the people that make it easy to be loved. They mean love those that are even hard to love. And we can see that we are called to love our enemies in Matthew chapter 5, verses 43 through 48, which say, you have heard the law that says, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. In that way, you will be acting as true children of your Father in heaven. For he gives his sunlight to both the evil and the good, and he sends rain on the just and the unjust alike. If you love only those who love you, what reward is there for that? Even corrupt tax collectors do that much. If you are kind to only your friends, how are you different from anyone else? Even pagans do that. But you are to be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. And so just like I said, being perfect is a really hard thing for us to attain as humans, that we have sinful nature. But that should be our ultimate goal, that we shouldn't use that as an excuse to not love others or to not strive to be perfect. But we should strive to live our lives as closely to Jesus as possible. And another place in the Bible where this is talked about is in Luke chapter 6, verses 27 through 28, which say, but to you who are willing to listen, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who hurt you. That even the hardest people to love, we are called to still love. Those that hurt us deeply, that we were those people to Jesus, that he was betrayed by one of his closest friends, that we are called to love even the Judases in our lives. That Judas is the disciple that betrayed Jesus, and instead of throwing him out or casting him away, Jesus still ate the Last Supper with him. He knew that Judas was going to be the one to betray him, yet he still gave him a place at his table and loved him anyway. And so that's what we are also called to do. And I know it can be really hard, but we're also called to forgive. I have a whole episode on forgiveness, so if you want to know more about that and how to love someone and forgive them after they've hurt you, I would recommend going to check that out. And if you want to know more about the love of God and how he loves us, I also have a whole episode on that as well. So those are two really good episodes to go back and watch if you haven't already, that partner with this episode very well. But I was just listening to worship music this morning, and So Will I, or 100 Billion Times by Hillsong and Benjamin William Hastings came on. And at the end of the song, it says, I can see your heart 8 billion different ways. Every precious one, a child you died to save. If you gave your life to love them, so will I. And so that's going to be my challenge for you all this week, is to ask God to show you people through his eyes instead of your own. That when you're going out and about, when you're at school, you're at the grocery store, you're at work, wherever you may be, that you would ask God to show you people, even complete strangers, not just those around you, but also complete strangers. That you would be able to see them through God's eyes instead of your own. And thank you all so much for watching this episode, and I will see you all next week. Bye!